Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's the Historical Gamer. Been a little while since my last video, which was an announcement about a podcast for Scourge of War and announcing their next generation of games. I probably should have announced sooner what that was. Obviously, if you tuned into the podcast over at the Strategy War Gamers Tumblr page, you already know. But if you don't know yet, the announcement is Scourge of War Waterloo. That is the next generation game that's going to be put out by Norbsoft Dev. And the game is obviously, based on the name, it's going to be taking the Scourge of War game overseas across the pond to cover the Battle of Waterloo. Now, this is a bit of a change, obviously. The Scourge of War games previously and the Take Command games before them have always focused on the Civil War. They've never really looked across at any other conflicts other than the Civil War. But there has been a fairly well done mod, a Napoleonics mod, which has been made for Scourge of War Gettysburg, which kind of shows how the game could play. But there's a few announcements or a few details that I wanted to touch upon about what already has been announced as far as the game's concerned. First of all, obviously the big announcement is that it's going to be covering the Battle of Waterloo and the Napoleonic warfare. So they've already announced there's going to be some big changes made to the engine and the way things play that are going to allow it to effectively model Napoleonic combat. The game is also going to feature more uniforms than they ever have before. They haven't really elaborated on what that's going to look like, but I'm sure, in fact I know there will be more on that coming hopefully in the near future. As far as a launch timeline, the game is slated to launch some point before the 200th anniversary of the battle, so that would be June of next year. So still a ways off, still early days of development as far as the game's concerned. But they've already started posting some screenshots of some stuff on Waterloo. They've posted some pictures of La Haye Sainte, or La Haye Sainte, or however you pronounce that. I'm terrible with European pronunciations, so maybe them sticking to the Civil War would have been better for me in terms of speaking. But anyway, they've also posted some pictures of the Hougoumont, the famous building complex on the French left flank, the British right, where the morning engagement took place, and really fighting took place there pretty much all day. And because there were buildings which were very important to the battle, and fighting in buildings was very important to the battle, the designer of the game has stated that they will have units being able to enter buildings and fight from buildings, and that is a must-have feature for the game. So that's another new feature. But without getting into kind of all the other, like I said, more uniforms, in-building fighting, obviously new formations and ways of fighting because it's covering the Napoleonics, with the biggest, I think, announcement is that they're, at least at some level, working on a campaign game. Now, to what extent that is going to be is not yet clear. Basically all they've said is they're working on a sandbox level campaign. The concept behind it is that you move units around kind of on like an overhead or a 2D map, kind of like contours for like a NATO sort of simulation or any kind of contour game. Maybe it'll even work out like Panzer Corps, who knows. I don't know if it'll be hex-based. They kind of seem to have preference against it being hex-based, but again, nothing's been made clear. That they just made a remark about that. So you'd move units around on kind of this 2D overhead map, and then when two units of opposing armies meet, you will end up having a battle on a map like this, in which you resolve that campaign or that battle, and then the impact on that battle will then be reflected upon the map, which you'll go back to. Norb said they wanted it to be a Norb is the programmer, for those of you who don't know, I believe the president of the company. Norb has announced that they want that to be part of their sandbox game. So right now you can fight sandbox battles, where basically you set up general parameters and then you get thrown any random place on the pre-existing game maps and fight it out. But there's very little strategic level to it. It's very tactical. So this would be adding a strategic element to the game, which would be very interesting, and I think a lot of people are really excited for. However, this goes with a big caveat. They were very clear in saying that The only thing they're guaranteeing at this point is that the Battle of Waterloo will be covered. They are looking at the battles of Lingley, Quatre Bras, and Wavre, which were all battles which took place either the day of or very near around the Battle of Waterloo. But as far as whether the campaign will be done, as far as whether Lingley will be done, Quatre Bras, there may be things that get patched in later. They seem to indicate they were shying away from downloadable content, but again, that's not entirely clear. But basically, these are the one thing they're guaranteeing that they're going to get done is Waterloo, and that's because, as I've said, their focus is on getting the game out in time for the 200th anniversary of the battle, which is in June of 2015. So they're not going to delay the launch to after that to get another battle in. If they don't get all the features in, they consider patching it, or maybe a downloadable sale type thing. Although, as I mentioned briefly, they do seem to be shying away from the downloadable content. Not altogether, I'm sure they'll do something, but Jim did say they were kind of considering anyway. And again, this is another one of those caveats because it's not set in stone as far as what they're doing yet. The only thing set in stone is that they're working on the Battle of Waterloo. But Jim did say that they were looking at changing kind of the way they do business a little bit, and indicated maybe that they're going to be shying away from doing individual battle DLC, and rather focusing on building the game engine and opening the game up to being as moddable as possible. So right now, for example, in Gettysburg, maps are not moddable. You can't go in and create, to my knowledge anyway, you can't go and create other Civil War battles. There are a few mods out there that do that, but they're all released by individuals who I believe have some kind of tie to Norbsoft Dev, whereas in Waterloo they want to make the game as moddable as possible. Moddable units, moddable uniforms, I would imagine, moddable maps. They mentioned they'd like to be able to have players go in and create their own own battles, and maybe even own wars. So while it might be covering Waterloo, maybe someone would go and make a Civil War mod. And I think that's a really good design strategy for them, because the game, the more open you make it to the wider range of people you can appeal to through the use of mods, the more exposure you can get your game, and hopefully the more units you can sell. So hopefully this allows them to be very successful with the game. They did also say that they want the game to have the ability to have 50,000 sprites, these little individual guys, all on the screen at the same time. So they're not going to go to fully 3D models like some other games like Hist War and Total War, but they basically said they can't do that, because if they were to do that, there's no way they could have 50,000 sprites all on the screen at the same time with the artificial intelligence that they currently have. I mean, whether you like Scourge of War or not, I think it's hard to deny that it has one of the best artificial intelligences in the real-time, if you want to call it that, the real-time genre of any game. And it's obviously must be very resource intensive, and is something that they pride themselves on and really sets them apart. It's one of those things that makes the game stand on its own. So it'll be interesting, because Hist War also has their Napoleonic game coming out, I believe, later this year, and with Waterloo, a Wellington version of Hist War, which is a similar style game, to come out at some point before Waterloo as well. So there's going to kind of be competing games on the market. Hist War appears to be going more for 3D, eye candy type stuff, and Scourge of War appears to be going more for sort of that epic campaign feel and that epic scale of huge numbers of men on the screen at once. I guess we'll see how this goes with effective AI. So I guess we'll see what happens. They've posted some screenshots already, as I said, over on their website. I'll post a link in the description. And this is just kind of my thoughts and my summary, I guess, of what's going on and what's being worked on. I know a lot of you wanted some more Scourge of War videos, and I have said I am looking at doing some more. This is actually from the South Mountain Battle Pack, but I would also like to do some from some of the mods as some of the anniversaries of various battles come up. So keep your eyes peeled. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, this is the Historical Gamer signing out.